made possible by our patrons and supporters. Please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/bookofhours or join Rockfin at rockfin.com/bookofhours. You can also make a one-time donation with Cash App or use PayPal at paypal.me/bookofhours. Thank you. Well, hello.
Hi, guys. How
Hi.
are you?
We're back with another bookmark.
How is everybody today? It's nice to see people.
Mhm.
You want to put on our chats
Yeah, I'll put on the
and
chats.
see if anybody wants to chat with us
Yeah.
while we do this?
Yeah. We are live today on YouTube, but we're not sure if this conversation is going to last on YouTube.
This conversation might actually get our whole channel taken down. It
might, yeah. Our last video, we got stern warning from Mr. YouTube.
Yeah.
And Mr. Alphabet.
Yeah.
But hello, Rockfin.
Hi, Rockfin. It's been a while. Thank you
for
joining.
Yeah, and I hope all of you who watch us on Rockfin have seen our latest video. Well, we'll talk about that a little later. But that's actually the latest video is what got us taken down, got taken down on YouTube, and what might be our final warning from Mr. YouTube. Slap the wrist. Yeah.
I mean, that's why we have a website. That's why we have Rockfin.
I know. We have
that's why we have Rumble. We even have a BitChute channel, and
we don't keep it up very well.
We don't really do much with it. But most importantly is we have our own website that we own. We own our own
Yeah, but not everything's up there. That's something that I need to work on.
Right. That's okay. I mean, so I guess we like having a YouTube channel because we have around.
Hi, Colleen.
Hi, Colleen. We like having a YouTube channel because we have around 3,000 subscribers. Mm-hmm. So that's good.
But what's amazing is Rockfin, we have a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
Because YouTube squelches the actual
they squelch the numbers. They squelch the. Yeah, we have a lot more. Pardon me. We have a lot more Rockfin subscribers.
Yeah.
We probably have as many, if not more, YouTube subscribers, but because YouTube's constantly manipulating the data to make it look like we're not, like we don't have anybody watching us there.
Well, they do like what Facebook does or used to,
Oh, yeah. And we probably have a farther reach on Facebook if we're seriously censored and squelched.
But we say that every time we come on the air. But anyway,
yes, so we do.
We got a lot to talk about today.
We do. Let's start out with some funny stuff.
Yeah.
My brother sent this to me this morning. This was hysterical.
Yeah. All right. This has something to do with where we live.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let me play that. It's up here.
What do you think the biggest cause of inflation is, and should the Biden administration be doing more?
No, I just do. I think that simply is also, Leah, let's talk about the trillions in massive tax cuts to the corporate tax structure as well. True. Trillions of dollars that have added to the deficit, and now they still want to support those as well. True.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty fucking funny. I don't know if any of you caught that, but
he's so he and Biden would make a great team.
Right.
So there's this this meme going around and this general consensus going around that this will be the new dream team.
Right. And it was like this demonic looking character, and then
Lurch.
And then Lurch or some crazy thing. But we so we have a new senator in the state of Pennsylvania.
He was the lieutenant governor here.
He was,
in the state of Pennsylvania, and now he is the senator. And I don't think anybody really voted for him.
No.
And
yet he won.
Right.
But so it was a real shit show that election, that particular election, because
this midterm
it was either
election is
it's been a shit show all the way around.
Yeah.
Fetterman
aren't all. I mean, shit show. It's like if you go to the dictionary and you look up the term shit show, it'll be a picture of American elections. Right.
So Fetterman was the lieutenant governor.
Hi, Brooke. Thank you for joining. This is what I look like.
Brooke.
This is what we look like. This is my husband. Brooke's been listening to my audios every day.
Great.
So I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you for joining today.
I know.
We decided to roll our monthly podcast today instead of tomorrow because there were some things that we felt were really important. And actually something happened today, which we're going to talk about, which made it seem more appropriate to go live today. So
I won the lottery.
No, you didn't. You didn't win the lottery. Why don't you show the meme? That's
okay.
That's trending.
So we're Fetterman is the guy down below in the black. So his whole campaign, he was wearing like a hoodie and dressed down. And there was even a campaign ad that says, "Hey, this funny looking guy, he's running for senator," and talking about Fetterman and how he was going to be, good for Pennsylvanians and protecting their vote. And there was a lot of language throughout the election. I can get into this in a minute, but so, it fed into that. So this was making the rounds after Tuesday, I guess Wednesday morning. And so we've got DeSantis family DeSantis.
Looking glamorous.
Yeah. Very glamorous. You look fabulous. Whatever. That's fine. And that's good. They got that American flag in the background. That's awesome. And then you've got the Fetterman campaign and family de Fetterman below, and they're looking very Pennsylvanian because we live here.
Very
we know
dressed down.
We know what it's like. He doesn't have the annoying accent, not that bad. He does, kind of, move his words together a little bit. But anyway, so not slurring, but just whatever, kind of clip his words.
So what's really going on with this meme, JP?
Okay, so my first thing was the way people were attacking it, the way people were attacking or making fun of him. I was like, well, this is you're now you're getting into class war issues. That was like the first thing for me. But
and that's not cool.
That's not cool. We don't like Fetterman. We don't like anything that really he stands for. I mean, he stands for some things that we agree with, but I mean, for the most part, he's a Democrat. He's a liberal. We don't like him, right? We're not conservatives either. We don't like DeSantis either. We don't like any politician.
We don't like anybody.
Yeah, any politician, right? So you know that about us. But okay, so that was my first thing. I hate the PA accent. Yeah, well, you should try Pittsburgh on for size. It's the PA accent plus. Add maybe a little Kentucky, add a little Chicago, and you've got more or less Pennsylvania.
Definitely a mixed bag.
Yeah, right? Pittsburgh accent. Yeah. Anyway, your thoughts.
So you had an idea that this meme was actually telling a story that we have been saying for the last, I don't know, about 3 years. And it has to do with the January 6th theater,
Right.
There were no insurrectionists at January 6th. It was all pre-recorded. It was all theater. The trials that took place after the fact, also theater, all theater.
Right.
All of
now,
it.
there may actually be some people who were arrested.
There may have been some people that they just decided to randomly take, at the Trump rally and put them in jail. And these people have been held without due process, in detention, without any official charges, have been held for almost 2 years now.
And that's the narrative. It's hard to know,
So it's hard to know if that's really happening, but from what we understand, from some attorneys that we listen to, that is happening. But there was no insurrection. There was no, nobody's life was in danger on January 6th of 2020.
I still think that it was recorded ahead of time.
So do I. No, it absolutely was.
It was recorded.
It absolutely
wasn't recorded that day. It was recorded ahead of time.
Right. No, it's theater.
It's total theater.
Play acting.
But so what we're getting at with this is, aside from all the conservatives going, yay, conservatives, they look fabulous. And then Fetterman, right? I think that Fetterman was like, they supported him. They didn't that shit show that we saw a moment ago where he's like, he had no, like, he was not ready for the majors, right? He's
Right,
not
so-
ready for the national stage. And yet, usually what they do is they groom these people.
Right.
They give them media training, and he was not ready for that
He never got the
softball
training.
question.
He never got his handlers set him up to be the schlub
Yeah.
that we're seeing.
And that's,
they said, whether they said it to him directly or whether it's just kind of understood, he's going to be the guy
right.
that gets scapegoated
Right.
as, the feckless, useless dumbass from Pennsylvania.
Right.
So, and who knows, maybe this could be, setting it up for another narrative that's going to come around in a couple of weeks or a month to say that, the people that allegedly won their seats aren't actually legitimate. And so he will gladly, to me, he's way out of his element. So he will gladly rescind his position and hand it over to Oz anyway. Maybe.
Well, I don't think that he's ready for that position either. But so the reason that these two
but
were
Oz
facing
at
off,
least has the media
savvy, yeah,
right?
of course. But
Mhm.
the reason that there were two, dudes who were basically not politicians. I mean, Fetterman was a mayor of a Pennsylvania mill town, probably near Pittsburgh. I don't know. And
So
Oz,
what does this?
but let me finish my background here, because a lot of people don't know who the fuck this guy is.
Oh,
okay.
I think
so
a lot of people do.
So I'm
know.
trying to set this up. So you got two guys. The reason that they were running in the first place against each other, because normally you have an incumbent, right? The incumbent retired. He was a Republican, and the Democrats really had a hard on to like maintain their power in the Senate. And they didn't want to flip this seat, or they did want to flip this seat. They didn't want to lose that seat. They wanted to take it away from the Republicans.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there was strategy going on there. All right. Now, what were you going to say?
Oh, well, I was just going to say that the meme itself represents what we also saw with the January 6th incident and what we're seeing in general happening on a federal level.
Okay.
Would you like to talk about it?
No,
Or
go
do you
ahead.
Want me
No, go ahead, because I want you to talk about it.
Oh, well, we're witnessing the deconstruction of any federal oversight and any federal law and anything having to do with any kind of congressional influence in our life. Your country is gone. And so the federal protections or the federal laws that have been in place, for a while are disintegrating rapidly, if not already gone.
Right. So what we're pointing out here is that, we saw Ocasio-Cortez, taunting the audience when she was doing an in-person like town hall meeting or whatever. In her district. They hate her. They were taunting, and she was just basically like sitting on the stage.
She was just like drinking her water and just
and swinging her legs and basically,
and making fun of them.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we have this situation with the Fetterman campaign. We have other situations out there. And so what we're seeing is this is evidence that Congress no longer has power. They are basically in it for the show and the show only. They're making laws. I don't know if I'm on screen, making laws. But really, they have turned over their authority to another power.
Right. And the power is corporate interests. And some of the corporate interests operate within our borders and some of them operate outside of our borders.
And then with a particular agency in the United States.
Right. And so we're going to get to that.
Right.
So what we want to do is direct you over to the new model deconstruction.
Yeah.
So this is called the new model deconstruction. So please take a look at it. Hang
on, it's not. I need to share. Sorry, guys.
What it is a video essay. It's at the very top. It's a video essay that we made a couple of years ago on our Book of Hours YouTube channel, which is still there. It may not be there after today, but you can certainly find it on the YouTube channel and go watch it. It's not very long, and it talks about the public-private partnerships and the handing over of all of our federal systems, handing them over to private, unelected members, committee members, project managers, school board members, municipal bodies, lunch ladies, grandma, anybody,
Public-private
all
partnerships.
of the power over you and your body has been handed over in one way or another to unelected people who you didn't vote into office, who shouldn't have any control or power or influence over what you do with your life.
And this, we talk about more localization of governance and the breaking up of the United States into
Interstate
compacts and sectors. And at the time we were paying more attention to the World Economic Forum. They are talking about that kind of breaking up of nation states and more regionalized government, so that you have global governance, and then like regional power, and then local, and giving a lot of power to the local. And that may sound good, like libertarians are like, hey, yay, small government, but really what it is it's going to be more of a concentration of power toward unelected people who are part of these public-private partnerships. They're in committees that are appointed rather than elected, and
So
we're going to
what-
see more and more of that. Now, I don't know, if we're going to get into the compacts as much. I'm kind of stepping away from that as much. But when we were talking about it the other day, you're like, no, I think that we're going there, and we're there.
Oh
now.
yeah, we're there now. So what we say when we say that this is really a corporate takeover, and unelected people are going to have control over your life, it would be something like this. A very passionate mother will go to the school board and will plead with the school board or the school district to remove the mask mandate or remove the testing mandate out of the school's policy. So right now, maybe some of the elementary schools, say across the United States, are requiring that those students take a test or wear a mask every day. So a mother will go to the school board or go to the local PTA meeting with a stack, this high, a stack, 3 feet wide of all the scientific evidence to prove her point, and go and arm herself with all of the rules and the laws and the Constitution and any other cases that may have been won regarding taking masks off children. And the school board will say, thank you, next. That's a very corporate response when you're like in a project with a bunch of people, and there's a project that everybody's working on, and you have an idea, and so you want to bring your idea to the table with your project manager or with the people you're working with. The manager will say, thanks.
Right.
Next.
Right.
So it's a very corporate response. And a lot of people, even on the right side of history, well, especially on the right side of history, apparently none of you have ever worked in offices, because you're having meltdowns and freaking out that the school board response to you isn't one of, oh, thank you so much for all of this detailed, valuable information, all of the scientific evidence that proves that masking and testing children is bad. Oh, look at that. You found the company that's collecting the DNA that has, connections to Chinese companies. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for coming to our, how would we ever know? They're not going to do that.
No.
That's not how it works.
Well, and
they simply go,
Well, speaking of freaking
They
out,
don't
and
care.
we don't have the video here. I wish we would have, though. The video that you played the audio for you in yesterday's audio that you did.
Lee Dundas.
Lee Dundas, screaming at the Orange County School Board.
Yeah, that
was,
doesn't work.
Right. And so the reason that she was doing that, or the reason that they weren't, responding to her at all, is because, again, they know that they have the power to do whatever they want because of the health, the HHS, and we'll I guess we can transition into that.
So I guess what we're trying to say is that the all of the practices that you have become accustomed to over the last couple of hundred years since the inception of this country, they have all gone away, and everything is different now. And a lot of people can't handle it. A lot of people are having a really hard time dealing with it as a result of this new type of behavior and this new type of response to a citizen's needs or a citizen's input. As a result of that, some people are, taking their own life. Some people are drinking too much. Some people are just running around in circles trying to please, these
or prove their
corporate
point.
masters, or prove their point and double down. And unfortunately, it's not going to work. That's it's over.
Right.
Yeah.
And
It's really
so
over.
and so along those same lines, wow, Michelle said a friend received a restraining order from the principal.
Right. I
where
remember
she
that.
works.
Right.
Where Michelle works.
Right. I remember that.
Wow. But basically, so between the the obnoxious behavior from the Senate, senators and Congress people, Ocasio-Cortez and Fetterman looking like a schlub, and not really being prepared. They set him up, by the way. I think that he was not given the proper training for that, but they wanted to prove a point that it doesn't matter how smart or how official these people sound or don't sound. It doesn't matter, because they're giving you that signal that they are no longer in charge. And the reason that the courts the courts have been not going along with these lawsuits and things like that. They dismiss them, they rule against them, all the things that have gone on before. We had a friend that has a restaurant, and she was taken to court by the health department here in Pittsburgh, in Allegheny County.
That was your first clue.
That was your first clue. I mean, she lost.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, okay, this is weird, right? None of this makes any sense, and none of it has made any sense, because something that I've always wanted, the government to go away. Unfortunately, the government's gone away, but except it's done in such a way that it's going to be very harmful to everybody, and taking away our taking away democracy, taking away rights. By the way, so here's another thing that's been very interesting in the language around the elections, is they've been talking about that democracy is one of those things that was on the line in this election, saying that a lot of the Republicans, these so-called
rhinos,
no, that the Trump the MAGA Republicans are basically, because they questioned the last election, they are dangerous to democracy, or they're undemocratic. They're using undemocratic language and things like that, and so, or anti-democratic even, I think, is what they've been saying. So this language of saying that thing, basically saying democracy is going away. Oh, and it's their fault. It's their fault. They're deflecting. Yeah, they're deflecting because they know that, first of all, they're responsible for it.
Well, they know,
and
people
second
don't
of
read
all,
either.
right.
I mean, when you put up the meme of the Fetterman DeSantis fashion show, whatever, people were like, DeSantis is great because he didn't lock down the state of Florida. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, governors don't have any power. So one of the things that
well, and something else that he did, right?
Well, we'll get there.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I started to do is I started to write a script, and the new video essay will be called War Crimes. And I originally started the concept because an extraordinary amount of military personnel had filed lawsuits against the Biden administration, against Joe Biden, against the HHS, against the NIH. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting. Some mainstream websites or mainstream articles were talking about it. Military websites were talking about it. I went to a bunch of military websites and learned that, in conjunction with these lawsuits that were being filed, an extraordinary amount of servicemen were missing from their posts. Like they had just stopped, being a part of what they had signed up for. And I thought, okay. And I went a little bit down a rabbit hole and I started listening to more and more of Attorney Todd Callender's interviews with people who, where he's talking about, military lawsuits that are taking place. And the lawsuits were basically filing, charges or filing lawsuits against the Biden administration for forcing our military personnel to take countermeasures, or what are being called vaccines, but they're actually countermeasures or bioweapons, forcing them to do that. And that if they didn't do that, then they had to suspend their post. Now, suspend with pay, suspend without pay, who knows?
Yeah.
But the fact is that they couldn't do their job. They couldn't do their job, which is to protect the country.
Right. And that's because they were incapacitated, right?
Right. Completely incapacitated. So what we have here is a national security threat on a larger scale. Like if you really start to think about this, suddenly our borders have become vulnerable because we have major, holes. We have huge holes where military personnel used to occupy. So I started going down this little rabbit hole and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this video essay called War Crimes. Then I went a little bit deeper and I stumbled upon Bailiwick News, which we can bring up if you want.
Yeah, let me show that.
So I stumbled upon Bailiwick News, and I want to read to you. Where is Bailiwick News? It's right there. Do you not see it? So I want to read to you a statement that jumped out at me that sort of changed the format and changed the direction of the video essay that I'm going to be doing called War Crimes. So building the case to prosecute members of Congress, presidents, Health and Human Services, and Department of Defense secretaries and federal judges for treason under 18 U.S. Code, Section 18 U.S. Code 2381. So this is the American Domestic Bioterrorism Program that Catherine Watt writes about, and she has it pinned to the top of her page.
Is it this one here?
It's at the very top. Scroll. There it is.
This one.
She has it pinned to the top of her page. And, the language here is very strong. The basic goal of the architects, which has been achieved, so this has already happened, was to set up legal conditions in which all governing power in the United States could be automatically transferred from the citizens and the three constitutional branches into the hands of Health and Human Services Secretary. Effective at the moment the HHS Secretary himself declares a public health emergency, legally transforming free citizens into enslaved subjects. In other words, Congress and U.S. presidents have legalized and funded the overthrow of the U.S. Constitution, the U.S. government, and the American people through a massive domestic bioterrorism program relabeled as a public health program conducted by the HHS Secretary and the Secretary of Defense on behalf of the World Health Organization and its financial backers. So that's why my video essay will be called War Crimes. And I've mostly finished the script. And then what's going to happen is JP and I are going to record the script and then add the appropriate artwork. And can you put our...
I am.
Add the appropriate artwork and music to support the script.
Yeah.
Are you having trouble?
I'm having trouble. Yeah, I can't find
well, isn't it over here somewhere? There you go.
Oh, did you want the thing back?
No. Oh, but the border's back.
Right, I know.
So,
Okay, there we go.
okay. So I wanted to
new controls. Sorry.
I wanted to have people go to Bailiwick News and read over it as much as you can. It's packed full of information. It's very dense. There's a lot there. It's far too much for us to go into in this particular podcast.
It's at bailiwicknews.substack.com. And so that's spelled here, Bailiwick, BILIWICK news, and .substack.com. And you'll be able to find it, of course.
So one of the things that you want to try to wrap your head around is I was talking to JP this morning over breakfast, and I was saying, this is basically what needs to happen in order for people to really truly understand. Somebody needs to go to the Library of Congress with the printout of the Public Health Services Act, and they need to tell the people at the Library of Congress to take them to where the beautiful Constitution of the United States is.
It's all right. That's
okay.
Fine.
And open up the little cabinet where the Constitution sits, probably behind glass. Take it out, light it on fire, and replace it with the Public Health Services Act, because that's your new Constitution right now. It's not going to happen. It's already been happening. And I'll explain to you, I'll give you some examples of how this has already happened. So if you could put that illustration in your mind, and well, Michelle, I don't think you would want to do that. I was just trying to make people see that the Constitution is totally eradicated, and it's been replaced with something called the Public Health Services Act. And in order to demonstrate like the gravity of that and what that really means, I thought, well, it would be kind of interesting if someone did like a performance art piece or a performance piece and went to the Library of Congress
and did that.
Where
Hi, Sean.
Hi, Sean. You always make us laugh. So let's talk about how it is that the United States Constitution was handed over to Health and Human Services. What were the vehicles by which they were able to make that happen? And one of the vehicles is something called an OTA, or an Other Transaction Authority. It's up at there it is. So an Other Transaction Authority is basically nothing more than a contract between the Department of Defense and in this case, say Pfizer, or any pharmaceutical company or any subcontractor. So the Other Transaction Authority, or the OTA, has an agreement with a private entity, a corporation, whether it's a pharmaceutical company, something maybe out of the food industry, who knows.
Mm-hmm.
And and what you get is immunity from any lawsuits, anything at all, in case your product that you are making on behalf of the Department of Defense harms somebody. So it, and also there's no regulation, there's no
oversight. There's
no
nothing.
oversight.
Yeah, there's no accountability.
Process, there's no accountability. Right. There's no oversight. There's no regulating body to check to make sure that you haven't put poison, like in a toothpaste. Right. You know what they say, or in this case, poison in a vaccine. Right. So there's it's all secret. Nobody knows what's in the vaccines. Nobody knows what's in the product because of these OTAs. All right, so that's one aspect of the way that they've undermined the Constitution, is they've taken away transparency to what it is that you're putting in your body. Another aspect to undermining the Constitution is through something called the Emergency Use Authorization, or the Notice on the Continuation of the National Emergency. So since this entire COVID fraud has taken place, the national emergency was first declared on March 13th of 2020, and it has been renewed every 90 days. Can you block that person?
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you know how to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're getting this from YouTube because they are
I don't have any
they're
control.
flagging us.
Yeah, I don't have any control over.
So let me see if I can figure this
Yeah.
out.
You want me to do that while you talk?
Well, you'll have to. Yeah. So you'll have to go to YouTube
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
and
Continue.
Okay. So what the emergency use authorization does is it basically says we need you to stop being free so that we can deal with this emergency. We need you to stop living your life like free citizens, so that we can address this health issue. All right. So all of that has to do with undermining your did you find it?
Yeah.
All that has to do with undermining basically your freedom of movement, which is the basis of the Constitution, is being able to move freely. But now what they do is they have us chained kind of like in our homes, what with lockdown, kind of like a slave. Do you know how to block them?
I don't know how to block them.
Yeah.
I know
So
how to like.
you know what I'm
remove them.
trying to say. You want
Yeah.
to do it while I deal with this?
Well, I've been listening to. I've been.
So do you know how to? Do you know what I'm trying to say here?
Do you
understand
I wasn't paying 100% attention, so I don't know where you left off.
Well, all I'm saying is that the emergency use authorization has undermined the Constitution because it takes away your right to move about freely,
Right.
which is the basis. Sorry, we've got to take care of this.
Okay.
bot.
Because this bot is putting up chats about find yourself a hot girl. So yeah, we need to get rid of that and delete it.
Do you understand like how emergency use authorization?
Yeah.
Like how it.
I can delete those, but I can't. I don't know how to block them.
No, I'm blocking them now. So, oh look, they're already blocked. Okay, all right, that's good. They're fine. So, do you understand though how emergency use authorizations undermine the Constitution? So they put these tools in place. So it's not like they literally walked over to the Hall of Congress, took out the Constitution and ripped it up. No, they have to put in language that will undermine the essence of what it means to be free. I hope that makes sense to people. So within the public, within the Public Health Service Act, and by the way, the reason we have the notice on the continuation of the national emergency concerning the coronavirus disease 2019 for the COVID-19 pandemic, the reason we have this from the White House up here is because it's dated February 18th, 2022. And that was the last time that the United States government, that was the last time that the White House officially announced that we were in a national emergency. Unfortunately, and so when you're in a national emergency, it means that it opens up a revenue stream of funding that will go down into the states and down into your communities. So February 18th, 2022 was the last time the White House officially announced the national emergency. These have an expiration date. They expire every 90 days. So that means on May 18th, 2022, it expired. You're going to hear all sorts of crazy language about how the national emergency is being considered to be extended until 2023 and all sorts of language from mainstream media. You're going to hear that. But the reality is you need to focus your attention on the HHS. And I hope I put that up there.
HHS. Okay. All right, let me find that.
So the
the other thing I was going to say is, even Biden came out and said,
the pandemic is over.
You might have said that. I don't remember, but anyway. So okay.
No, actually, I hadn't said that. So Biden came out to say, yeah, the pandemic is over, and so people were very confused. So the next, and I hope I I hope I pulled this up because this is the I don't think I did. This is the HHS's no.
Yeah.
This is the HHS's announcement that yes, we are in fact in a yes, we are in fact in a national health crisis. If you want, I can really quickly find it because I want people to see it. It's dated October 13th. So what happens is the HHS, let's see, here we go, renewal of determination. There it is.
All right, I'll bring it up.
Okay, so what happens is the HHS has determined that yes, we actually are in the process of a health crisis. Now, this was, this is, no,
No.
it's not that one. Scroll up. Yeah, there it is.
Okay.
So this is what it looks like, okay? The renewal of determination that a public health emergency exists. What this really is telling you is that the HHS has said, yep, we're all still very sick. We're all in a public health crisis. Yep, we have a public health emergency. And as long as the HHS keeps announcing that we're a sick country, then they still have the power to do all sorts of things to you. To say, oh, you have a sinus infection? Looks like COVID. Better go to the hospital. And then we all know what happens when you go to the hospital, right?
Yeah.
The HHS has unlimited authority, unlimited power to do anything from force inoculate you, force quarantine you, and all sorts of crazy stuff that you know is really is the stuff of nightmares. But hey, Julie and JP, nobody has the right to do that. What about the Constitution? Well, the problem is that Congress itself wrote into the Public Health Services Act an undermining of any body, whether it's, the federal government or state attorneys or county attorneys or any other agency at all that might come forward and say, yeah, but what about the Constitution? The Congress even took away their own power to undermine the HHS. So the HHS can say, I don't care that we have a perfectly healthy society and there isn't any sign of a pandemic or a virus or any kind of sickness. The HHS says, what I say goes. So whether it's real or not, the HHS has the power to make that announcement. But what's even more disturbing is that every other power structure in place that could question the HHS or even investigate if their announcement is legitimate or not, that power has been taken away. All of your bodies of government that would question the HHS's efficacy on announcing that we're in a public health crisis, all of that has been rendered impotent. And that's how you have your constitutional protections taken away. So what are some of the things that I noticed that were very disturbing as I continued reading through Bailiwick News and discovering the whittling away of an individual's rights or constitutional protections?
Mm-hmm.
I found a website called the National Conference for State Legislators. And the National Conference for State Legislators has a part of their website that's dedicated to quarantining and isolating American citizens outside of due process, which is something that was written into the National Defense Authorization Act by Obama. So the state quarantine and isolation statutes, although they say in the beginning of their, at the front of their website, although they say quarantine and isolation are legal public health authorities that may be but rarely are implemented to prevent the spread of communicable diseases, ill people may be isolated to protect the public by preventing exposure to infected people. And so my question to the NCSL is, if it's rarely used, then why did you go in and update your statutes as of September of 2021? And you can scroll down, you can scroll through this website, and you can keep scrolling and keep scrolling, keep scrolling, and you can go to your state and you can find out who has the authority to incarcerate, quarantine you, who has the authority not to, but everyone's basically given the authority to. And you can find out what the penalties are and what sort of police powers are put in place in order to force quarantine you. So one of the things that took place in 2020 was they said to the population, oh please, lock yourself down and don't go to school, and put leg irons on yourself and put chains around your face and stick your arm out and please get inoculated, right? And all this stuff. And then they said, look, to incentivize you, we'll give you free donuts, we'll give you $100, a $100 gift card, and all this crazy stuff. Okay. That was to butter you up. That was to tenderize you, to get you used to the idea that you have no rights and you have no constitutional protections. Not even your governor can intervene. Not even DeSantis, who wrote language in I have to look it up, in section 2606 of the Florida Health and Human Services Act or whatever, where he specifically talks about, force inoculating and force quarantining and things like that. So it's called, sorry, there's a lot of stuff to go through here. So people seem to think that, Florida is different.
Is this little free society
it's not.
It's not. Yeah.
All you have to do is go back to the NCSO website and
go and look up
your state, including Florida, and then you will see that let's see, I want to find out what is it. Here it is. Florida's SB 2006. It was signed May 3rd, 2021 by Ron DeSantis. And so each state has their own kind of laws around this. And so the National Conference of State Legislators has put together sort of a recap of each state's laws or whatever and through these statutes. Okay.
So if you don't comply, the penalties, any person who violates quarantine rules or regulations is guilty of a second-degree misdemeanor.
Right, and so that seems to be pretty standard across the United States.
Now that's a little more, a little less harsh than some of the other states. I think Pennsylvania, it is an actual misdemeanor.
Right.
So a second degree, I imagine, is a little less. I'm guessing.
So a lot of people say, oh, well, they've never forced quarantined and they've never forced isolated people in this country before. Why would they do it now? But you see, they already are. When you're in the corporate sector, for instance, there's a lot of corporate sectors that make people take a test every day, which is also a violation of your constitutional protections. And so people are taking tests every day before they go into work. And then if they come up positive, the rules of your company are that you have to stay home in quarantine until you come up negative. And it could be, 2 days, it could be 4 weeks. So they're already teaching you how to quarantine. Right. They're already doing it. Right. Like this business of, oh my God, it's coming. No, it's already here.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, as you said, I mean, you pointed out to me the other day that even today, employees at Nordstrom have to go through like a couple sheets of questions, like pertaining to their health. Right. And it's kind of remarkable that this is the case. And I'm not really sure why it is they're participating, and yet I don't see that in a, it could be a lot of the retail sector that has to go through that.
Yeah, it's
I'm
probably
not
all of them.
seeing that as much in the corporate sector, but in the sort of office work kind of thing. But it might be that they just don't have enough people. They need to keep as many people around as possible, so they don't do that. But I'm not certain.
So the vehicles by which the HHS, hospitals, vaccine clinics can commit these war crimes are through other transaction authorities or OTAs, as well as emergency use authorizations or EUAs, or the announcing of a public health emergency. The only way that this can get reversed, not by voting your favorite, fancy dresser as governor. Okay. The only way that this can get dismantled,
or vote for your local Goomba or whatever.
yeah,
right?
whatever. The only way that this can stop is if you take down the HHS altogether. The HHS has to be dismantled. Like it literally just has to be dismantled. And the best way that you can dismantle the HHS, everyone's sitting on the edge of their seat. How do we make this happen? The best way you can do it is to never, ever, ever go to the hospital. Never, ever, ever give them the reason to cannibalize you and enslave you into the system. And that's a hard thing to do, because a lot of us, the minute we get a bout of pneumonia, bronchial pneumonia, we go straight to the emergency room. We go, what about if you break a leg? How are you supposed to set a broken bone? The problem is that everything in our apparatus is attached to the HHS now. Everything. And so if you dismantle the HHS, then your whole economy might go to shit too.
Yeah, because everything is tied to health now.
Everything is tied to health. Right. So we're in a pickle.
Well, I was just
to say the least.
To say the least. Like the third Sustainable Development, SDG.
ESG. Or Sustainable Development Goal.
Yeah, no, that's the UN. ESG is corporate.
Oh, right,
okay.
Right. Okay.
So Sustainable Development Goal number 3 is health, and it's. I love pickles.
I love pickles too.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, Darren.
Yeah. Right, yeah. So I lost my train of thought. So. Wow, I really did.
No, you were talking about Sustainable Development Goals.
Right. Okay. So
we were talking about how the HHS.
So recently, like this week, was something that I became aware of, because I'm in the industry known as usability or UX design or whatever, and there's this thing I never even heard of before. It was called Usability Day, and it's always the second Thursday of November, and it's linked to the UN. Mm-hmm. And this year's theme was health, and they tied it to SDG number 3, which talks about health. And the thing that killed me about it is that, and this is why I'm tying it. I'm talking about this because it shows you, it's an illustration of how everything is getting tied into health, mm-hmm. right? So they were talking about health, but they weren't talking about like taking care of yourself and getting the right amount of sleep and getting exercise. Mm-mm. They were talking about telemedicine, digital health records, all these things that are technology oriented, and how you interface with the health industrial complex, right? It was your interface with with those organizations, with the health departments and the hospitals and the the various doctors and the insurance, right? Mm-hmm. And as opposed to what we think of as health, mm-hmm. right? Health and healing, right? Mm-hmm. And they also started bringing in, and this is something that a lot of people have been talking about, but something that is kind of a twist on it. They started talking about air pollution and water pollution as being vectors for bad health, mm-hmm. and they noticeably dropped the carbon mm-hmm. and climate change language, mm-hmm. but went to pollution, which is something, which is something that I've been talking about for a long time.
Yeah,
you guys are talking about climate change through carbon, mm-hmm. right? Too much carbon in the atmosphere, and I'm saying you guys aren't talking about health, air pollution, water pollution, land pollution. You're not talking about this, when that's really the problem,
right?
Right? All the windmills, require mining of rare earth minerals, and lots of high tensile steel, okay, or something that, lots of metal, right, has to be mined, right? The solar panels require, lots of industrialization and pollution as a result of manufacturing these things. And a lot of times these devices that are supposed to be clean energy sources don't produce the amount of energy that their lifespan, that they're basically promoting, that they're actually saying. A coal plant or an oil plant or even nuclear will provide more energy within its lifetime than these other devices that are allegedly clean energy sources. And so they're expensive, they are costly to the environment, and they don't really produce the kind of energy that they're being promoted for. But the interesting thing again is coming back to this idea of toxins in the environment, and toxins, as we know, are the real culprit for what they're calling COVID, right? What they're calling COVID, we've been saying for a long time, is it's a toxin. It is not a virus, and we've said that it's never been a virus. We've always said that it's never been a virus. It's been a marketing. First, we were like, it's a marketing campaign, and then we started realizing that, there are people that are actually getting sick, and we started realizing that they had been poisoned through a very specific way, and I don't want to get into that, but through very manipulated means, rather than just this random crap.
So in answer to Brooke's question, what about climate being the next emergency declared for quarantine? What I just explained, Brooke, is that the HHS has all the power. I feel that this scaremongery language that seems to be trending on social media, that the climate emergencies are going to be the thing that lock us down again. No, because the HHS has all the power.
Right.
So right now, I just showed you that the Secretary of Health and Human Services has announced that we are in a health crisis as of October 13th. That means that each little county and each little municipality can decide, based on that statement, can go from HHS, which is all the way up here, all the way down here to your local municipality, and ignore everything in between.
Okay, but what I will counter with is that we saw this summer Los Angeles saying you can't go to the beach because it's too hot.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is climate related.
It's climate related, right? But it was for your health.
But it was for your health. So they're going to tie it into your health, and it's always going to be very subtle.
Yeah. So the HHS has announced that the country is still in a health crisis. So then it's up to your municipality to decide
how to implement
how they want to respond to what the HHS continues to declare. In the case of Orange County, that municipality that governs and manages Orange County, the county of Orange County in California, that county decided to implement an emergency on their own to their own citizens. And when they do that to their own citizens, then that means lockdown, wear a mask, can't go to school, can't enter places without showing proof of a vaccine, all that stuff. And that's a county thing. So other counties might go, oh, well, Javier Becerra, even though you said that the whole country is in an emergency, my county seems to be kind of okay and healthy, so we're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
So it really just depends on
where you live.
Yeah.
I want to. Okay. I want to address Geneva's question. Is that why it affects some worse than others, depending on how much toxin in your body can handle? Yeah, I imagine. I mean, it also has to do with age. And this is why we saw, they basically went after the old people first. And you know, and they went after a lot of people that were, you know, compromised or whatever,
Immune
compromised or whatever. You know, yeah, I mean, it depends on, like, you know, where you live and what your lifestyle is, if you smoke or not. And, you know, they were, you know, if you look at all the things that they were talking about as like sort of comorbidities, or the people that get affected most by COVID, then those are the people that were either targeted or that were most affected by the toxins. So people who were overweight, okay, that was a generally something I heard across the board all the time. So those people would probably react, you know, negatively to whatever is entering their system, more radically or more severely, I guess is a better word, than others, right?
Right.
You know,
so
and you know, and it was random. I mean, it was not random, but it was like it was different places. It was a small enough amount of people so that they could say, look over there. Oh my God, there's a health crisis. There's this thing that's happening and people are dying. And it was just enough people to convince the you know,
the rest of the world that it was a virus.
Yeah.
And you know, if you follow us at all, you know that, and especially on my daily audios, I talk a lot about how, you know, this has been manufactured to. And in fact, the other day I talked about germ warfare, and this is something I'm incorporating into the script for the big video essay that we're writing. And just so you know, a video essay is, well, you all know what an essay is, where you read it, like a blog piece where you just read it. Well, what a video essay is basically a blog piece, but music and artwork incorporated into it. And we did a video essay. We want to show Reason Redux, because that's where we are now in our points and our talking points.
Okay.
We did a video essay recently to talk about the very thing that we're talking about right now, which is people getting sick and dying. And it's called About 61,000 Lives. Keep scrolling up or down. I mean, up. There it is. About 61,000 lives perished.
You put it in there. Okay.
Yeah. So I wanted so what I want to do is direct you over to Rumble. If we were to put this on our YouTube channel, we would be.
Well, it got taken down.
Well, that's right. It already got taken down off of YouTube.
Yeah.
So I'm once again.
And we even said, no, this shouldn't be taken down. And they said, yes, it should.
Right. And so what this is, what this particular video essay is about, is how the Society of Actuaries, which is a very well-respected society that's been around since the 1800s, that collects data. The Society of Actuaries, along with insurance companies that were paying out death and disability benefits, found a high rate of death and disability within a certain time frame, and that time frame was Q3 of 2021. If you're familiar with Edward Dowd, he talked about this openly. We were so inspired what Edward Dowd said and the information that he presented that we decided to make a video essay out of it. And it's about 20 minutes, and it just beautifully depicts how these lives perished it beautifully depicts how these lives perished in Q3 of 2021 versus, did you see that?
Yeah, that was weird.
Okay.
Little blip.
Little glitch.
I think we're still on, but yeah, go on.
Versus how people, you know, in the past, prior to the rollout of the bioweapon or the countermeasure, how they hadn't died. So I want to direct you guys to go to Rumble and take a look at this. And it's still happening. You know, it's still going on. These it looks like we're still live.
Yeah. So can I say something?
Mm-hmm.
The video itself. So this was a follow up to a video that I wrote, or that we wrote. I don't know. I guess it was The Reason. Yeah, it was released about the beginning of this year. Okay, so around February 2022. It looks like we're still.
Yeah, we're still fine.
Yeah. Okay.
We had a weird glitch.
Yeah, we saw a little blip. Kind of.
Thank you, Geneva, for letting us know.
Yeah, still live. Okay. Because we just don't know. We might get taken down. And just, you know. So anyway, and it was mostly about like the reason that nobody, you know, like people were dying, but there was no reason given. And I got into some other areas of like, you know, talking about health and how, you know, we used to be more oriented towards, you know, taking care of your own health, taking care of yourself, but going to the doctor when you're sick, but not the medical industry coming along and saying you're sick no matter what you are, right? No matter
Right.
what you think,
Right.
right? But this was more about like, you know, it was musing on the whole idea of like, you know, my body, my choice, or just like the idea that people were dying, but nobody was talking about why. Now this picks up where that left off and kind of went in more into like all the deaths that took place in 2021 and continues into 2022. But we saw a big segment of people dying in the professional sector who were in the what they call the cohort of the millennial generation. And, you know, passing off the excuse that it was the great resignation, as if, you know, they suddenly said, you know, during COVID, I got a chance to think about my life and how I'm just throwing it away in this corporate job. I'm going to go plant flowers and and sell my hand woven baskets. And, you know, on Etsy, you know, and things like that.
Yeah.
And
people don't leave a really good income that affords them excellent benefits, affords them, you know, an opportunity to travel the world 2 or 3 times a year, where they can live in their big fancy apartments in San Francisco. They don't
not
just
only that,
leave
I mean,
that
you know,
to go find themselves.
You had, you know, people in the corporate world who had their, you know, they were sort of, you know, not, their career had been sort of established, but they were still, you know, working on their 401k, and they were, they were working away. They weren't just going to quit.
Right. You don't have people. That's not.
And it was.
So what the reason redux is the conversation around, you know, accepting the fact that there is a continued and aggressive attack on our lives, basically. And so what the reason redux does is it talks about a group of people that were basically taken out. And so we can assume that because it happened before, that it's going to continue to happen, and that it's not going to stop.
Right.
So we were actually going to do this very live stream tomorrow. But we changed our mind earlier, and then we went out to the local grocery store to grab a few things, and we ran into a neighbor, literally like a neighbor that lives
just like a stone's throw from here.
Literally
not across the street, but a couple, you know, a block over.
Yeah, she's, you know, takes 60 seconds to walk to her front door from our house. And she told us in the grocery store that her 53-year-old daughter was having terrible sinus attacks about a year ago. And it was, you know, had always had a history of sinus infections and problems like that. Went into the hospital, and by November of 2021, November 9th, 2021, she was dead. Yeah. And this is not somebody who I think that she may have taken the COVID shot. I'm not sure. But
no, so our neighbor said that, you know, she is very, you know, anti-government.
Well,
and she
was
was
talking about the girl who died.
I know, I'm going there.
Okay.
She was saying that because she says, I'm afraid because of my influence of not wanting to take the shot and not, you know, and telling the government that you're not telling me what to do. I'm not putting anything in my body. She's blaming herself for her daughter's death because she influenced her not to get the shot.
So this is a perfect example. Like, this story is a perfect example of where of all the touch points of this entire experience. So we have somebody who just has a regular sinus infection. She doesn't have COVID. She doesn't have a deadly virus, but she takes herself to the hospital thinking that she's going to get care. The hospital then entraps her, financializes her, probably put her on an intubator,
right,
and then ultimately murdered her so that they could get, you know, their $39,000 whatever for every COVID
Their
death. that they
COVID
were-
rebate.
Their COVID rebate, because we learned early on in 2020 that anybody who died of a COVID death was getting money.
Mm-hmm.
So our friend's daughter died in the hospital. It was labeled a COVID death. Therefore, the hospital got incentivized.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Then our friend said, it's my fault that she died because I was not going to get the vaccine and I influenced my 53-year-old daughter also not to get the vaccine. So it's my fault. So this is where you have that self-blame, that sort of, in a way, that sort of like malignant communitarian, like totally evil way where the community blames someone else for something else that happened.
Right.
When it's actually the power structure of the HHS and the lack of transparency, and also the out and out financialization or cannibalization of human beings that's happening here.
Well, and I think that, shame and blame has always been part of this major campaign that was called COVID-19.
Right.
And as we've learned, as you pointed out, it was the DOD, the military, that instigated this thing. And then, basically turned it over to the HHS.
Right.
But before that, something that you pointed out to me and that I agree with, and something that we've been saying is, first of all, we've been saying that this has been a masterful marketing campaign to the degree that I've never seen in my life.
Right.
I have been involved in the creative marketing world and in, the corporate, sort of marketing sector to some degree. And I've never seen branding and execution to this level, because everything, messaging, imagery, the advertising itself, the way it was disseminated, the way it was, rolled out, was with military precision. What better organization can do that? I've been like racking my brains out, like, how did they do this? Who could possibly put this together? Because I don't think it's possible in the corporate world for this to actually happen. It had the precision of military. Well, it was the DOD that did this, and they spent, and something that you pointed out, you feel like they spent most of their money on the marketing in order to get people, like, as you said, tenderized, and thinking that, it's sort of that Pavlovian thing, right? So now when they ring that bell, you start to drool, right? You go into that idea that I have to put a mask on, I have to hide in the house, I can't go to work,
You'll do it to yourself.
And you'll do it to yourself because they have trained us very well.
So regarding our friend who we ran into today, whose 53-year-old daughter last year had a terrible sinus infection, went to the doctor to be treated for a sinus infection and ended up dead. So that the hospital could get funding.
Right. And it was weird too. Well, go ahead.
Our friend then said, it's my fault that she's dead because she died of COVID. So they say. She didn't. They murdered her. She died of COVID because I won't get the shot. And so as a result of her guilt and her inability to deal with her grief, and in that moment of heavy grief, you're not thinking clearly, she went out and got 2 COVID shots.
Now, to be fair, she got the one COVID shot because of this guilt. She got the one COVID shot before her daughter died, when she was still in the hospital,
about a month,
so that she could see her in the hospital. So she was coerced into getting the first one. Right.
And then she went out and got a second one.
So this is what they're doing to people. Again, the shame and blame, or
and
the
she's
coercion.
Coughing.
Now she's
coughing terribly. Everybody I've ever met, except for a few people here and there who have had a COVID shot, everybody has a bad cough. We don't, because, we don't, so.
Something else that she brought up that I thought,
like, this story hits every point.
Okay.
It hits every point.
Something else that she mentioned that was strange and that I wasn't aware of, but then it kind of tracked with something you recalled, was that she's like, I went into the emergency room to see her or in the ICU to
To
see
the
her.
ICU to see her
Right.
daughter.
And she said it was weird. It was like a separate unit, and it was all different, and people were acting weird, and it was just
And
unusual.
she said everybody was acting the same. That's the term that she used,
Yeah.
which I thought was really strange. And that she never experienced anything like that, like in the hospital.
Right.
She said that, so the same thing kind of sort of happened to me in February of 2020. I went to go see my autoimmune specialist here at the University of Pittsburgh, because I live in Pittsburgh. And in February of 2020, I had no idea that, anything was going on. I didn't know
No.
anything about anything. And then all of a sudden they made me sign something really quickly. And then they whisked me off into a special room and they took my blood. And and I had that same experience where everybody was just kind of like a zombie, and there was this weird energy in the air, and there was, dedicated rooms for things that seemed odd, like I'd never seen that before.
Mm-hmm.
So what we have here is a deployment of something in order to wipe people out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think I want to follow up with what you were talking about with like the.
I feel like I escaped with my life.
Right. I know. I agree. Well, because you were saying, you were kind of like freaked out a minute on me, where you were like, what if they had said, oh, that our results came back, and
because they did an automatic blood test on me,
and like
right there, without me really understanding what was going on,
and basically saying, what if they said, oh, we need to admit you right now?
I would have been like, oh, okay.
Well, that's what happened to our friend's daughter.
Exactly.
She went in to get, diagnosis and maybe some treatment, and they said, oh, we have to admit you right now
for a sinus infection.
Right. So, or pneumonia, or whatever they called it. They said, I think she said that they called it a viral pneumonia. Okay.
It wasn't.
And it wasn't.
It wasn't.
It was something.
She was talking about how her daughter was having sinus issues, and
Right.
So they made up something in order to financialize her.
Right. Now, something along the same lines, and what we've been talking about, and I wanted to follow up with the whole HHS thing, and what we've been seeing overall. This move to injectable healthcare, this move to this narrative that's been throughout the entire COVID thing, and that is that you cannot know whether you're sick or not. It's not up to you to determine whether you're sick or not. You shouldn't be doing your own research, because that's dangerous. You can only depend on the medical industrial complex. You can only depend on doctors. You can only depend on scientists, because the science, okay, you always have to defer to an authority.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot say, I am not sick. And so what we're seeing with this whole labeling of, what is it? The pre-communicable disease, pre-communicable.
You're pre-communicable.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're finding this is a new term that they've developed, and just like COVID, it's squishy, and it's purposely vague, and it's hidden. So you cannot say I'm not sick anymore.
Mm-mm.
If they say, oh well, you're pre-communicable, we're going to have to test and make sure that you're not going to spread something that you don't know about, because you might make everybody sick. And as somebody that you've been listening to a lot, the Sasha, the Russian woman,
Mm-hmm.
she's like, it's scientifically and statistically impossible for a virus to take out half the world.
Right.
Okay. It just doesn't work that way.
Right.
Even if you believe in viruses and
Right.
germ theory. Okay.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. Okay. And so this idea of this label being put on you, and this narrative of you cannot do things for yourself anymore, fits right into this whole campaign. And they're just going to continue rolling this stuff out and using this campaign and this narrative and this attitude that you don't know. And so we, the authorities who do know, are going to make sure that you don't spread anything that's bad, like disinformation or misinformation, or see, it follows through in various sectors.
Mm-hmm.
It's in health, it's in media, it's in
Tech.
tech.
Mhm.
Okay. So that you do not spread disinformation, so that you do not spread a disease, so that you do not, disobey.
Right. Right. Um, so I want to say something
Okay.
about that.
Yeah.
I want to say something about how the HHS has all of the power, has been given unlimited reach over your human experience. It's the HHS
Yeah, that's a good
that
way of putting it. Your human experience.
truly. And it's and because it's because I feel that this is such an important part of this, I kind of want to end it with that. But we have one more thing that
Yeah.
we want to
Yeah.
talk about.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit lighthearted. It's about this crypto kid, Sam Bankman
Yeah.
Fried.
Yeah.
He was
Wow, that was quite a
I
transition.
know that's a transition, and usually I'm a lot smoother with my transitions. But Sam Bankman Fried was running a crypto company called
FTX.
FTX.
Yeah.
And basically he defrauded his clients more than Enron defrauded their clients. So he is now like he is now like the biggest defrauder in the world, and he's some autistic kid who was living in
The Bahamas.
with 10 of his college buddies.
Mhm.
They decided to start this crypto company, and the whole thing, and he announced publicly that they filed for bankruptcy last night. They were the second largest donor to the Democratic Party, and they are now considered like they've defrauded the market more than even Enron did.
Right.
So
Right. And and I saw last night, I was like just kind of looking around Twitter a little bit. I usually don't spend a lot of time on Twitter, but I get emails, updating me on my feed of like what's, trending or whatnot. And I saw this one, and it was about this very subject. And it was the woman who was like the CEO or the, I forget, she's like 28 years old. And she was talking very glibly and smugly about, how her math, how she basically used in her job, in her role at FTX, she basically used elementary school math and, and being like really flippant about everything.
Right.
And it turns out that, she's to blame for the loss of money in this bankruptcy. Now, that's the story, right? This whole thing is, whether it's real or not, it doesn't matter, because it's the outcome that's what matters. Right.
Exactly. So we wanted to talk about, and I guess this does tie into the last point I want to make.
Yeah.
Which is that a lot of people are afraid that, we're going to go into digital currency, or that we're going to somehow become robots, or there's going to be a transhumanist thing that happens, or whatever. So first of all, this story about this particular crypto agency or this company,
exchange,
this crypto exchange, all that matters is what the end result of the story is. And the end result of the story is that the government is going to say it needs to be regulated. Crypto in general will need to be regulated.
Because you read a tweet to me this morning, and it just it just point by point by point.
Yeah.
Do you have it in front of you?
Yeah, it was a really good tweet.
Yeah.
Let me see if I have it.
But it basically, Julie and I intuited basically what this tweet said.
Yeah.
And we were saying, there was this thing going on. This they started this company, and then they made a lot of money. They were the second largest donor to the Democratic Party, and then they folded.
So in 2018, Barbara Fried, who is Sam Bankman Fried's mother, launches a Democratic Party PAC. Okay. And then so that was in 2018. And then in 2019, Joe Biden launches his presidential campaign. And then in 2019, SBF FTX launches their FTX crypto exchange. And then in 2020, SBF FTX, that's the name of the crypto company, donates the second largest amount to POTUS. And in 2022, they become insolvent because they defraud. They defraud to an extraordinary amount of money that's like the worst that's ever been defrauded ever. So they have to file bankruptcy and they become insolvent. So it just took 4 years for them to become insolvent. And then wouldn't you know it, in 2022, regulation of cryptocurrencies is needed because of this big, huge debacle.
Right. And there, you know, and so you got to know that this story is really kind of messed up. And this, not only is it a big distraction, but it's also, it tends to be, it tends to show us that it wasn't a real thing in the first place. It might've been a real company,
right?
But this whole thing with like these stories around them having, you know, orgies and
drug parties
and
orgies,
living in the Bahamas and you know, and being polyam and all this stuff, right?
I don't know about
so
that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it doesn't matter. Again, it doesn't matter whether this is real or it's not. It's the outcome that matters. And the same thing kind of trends with what I was saying before about your own health. And another company that kind of met an unfortunate end quickly, also out of Stanford. So Barbara Fried and her husband are both Stanford graduates and probably associated with Stanford somehow. And I can't think of her name, but
Elizabeth.
I forget. And then what's the name of the company?
Theranos,
right? So Hulu has a series on, or a show on now about Theranos.
Yeah, you may have been right the first time, and maybe not Netflix.
Maybe Netflix. I don't know. One of the two.
It's one of them.
They're interchangeable because you know. So this idea that you would be able to monitor your own, take your own blood samples and test your own blood and get the results back, and basically take care of your health based on what you receive. So you wouldn't have to interface with the hospitals or the doctors or anything like that. And that's a big threat to the industrial complex, right? So she had to be shut down. And you said something to me that you were like, oh my God, it's like all fitting together. Enlighten us what you're thinking.
So when I was listening to Catherine Watt talk to Sasha Latiopova, and these are two women who have basically come to the conclusion that through language in the Public Health Services Act, which started back in 1983, that the U.S. Constitution is gone and that all of the power has been designated to Health and Human Services. One of the things, and I don't even think that Catherine came to this conclusion the way I did. She innocently made a statement. If the public had been able to have access to something where they could take their blood before the shot and then they could take their blood after the shot on their own, then they would have been able to see a difference in their blood. And I was like, didn't we just have a product that was offered to the market that was affordable for individuals to basically, test their own blood and be able to read the outcome of their own blood? And
as soon as you started getting into that, I was like, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah. And
Theranos.
So Theranos was a product where you could do exactly that. Had something like Theranos been available and been marketed to the public in the way that, say, iPhones are marketed, something really cool and hip, and like, hey, you can take your own blood and see what your blood sugar count is, so you can lay off the cupcakes this week,
right?
Or if you're,
or like your Fitbit or something like that.
A Fitbit, you could take your own blood and you could really do this. Imagine how much different the outcome of this disaster and these war crimes would be if individuals were able to have the presence of mind to say, okay, I get it. There's a health crisis and I want to do my part. Let me take my blood and see what my blood is like. Seems okay.
Yeah.
Go get the shot. Okay, now let me take my blood and see what my blood is like. Whoa, it's different. What the fuck is going on? How much faster would we have been able to stop this if enough people had their own identifying markers to say there's something wrong?
Right. Because if you notice the COVID tests, which were, the PCR bullshit, you did it. If you did it yourself, you took it and then you turned it in and then you got the results back, right? It's just like the AIDS test was, right? Except they would do everything. So yeah,
taking Theranos off the market,
mm-hmm.
turning, Elizabeth, what's her name,
Yeah,
into a villain, creating a limited series or Netflix or Hulu series about her, turning her into a narcissist or a psychopath, really helps the Department of Defense continue the war crimes on you, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah. And it's something that, we were skeptical of whether the story was real or not for a long time. And, I'm beginning to think that it probably was real. But again, coming back to what I said before about FTX and the crypto thing,
same story.
It's the same story. It doesn't matter whether it happened or not. What matters is the outcome. That's just, yeah. I'm getting some texts and it's just marketing.
So it's the same story.
Mm-hmm.
A kid comes out, he's a wonder kid. He's, the crypto genius. He's the youngest in his field. He creates this tool. He creates this product, just like, Elizabeth created Theranos.
Mm-hmm.
They both have
really
that
young.
Stanford,
she didn't finish Stanford.
She was only 19 when she created this.
Yeah. So 19 is always the age they seem to point to.
I know, right?
Right.
So it's the same exact story, except this time it's for crypto and not for a health product.
When I was traveling, I was in Washington D.C. a couple of weeks ago, or about a week ago, and watching the shit show that was advertising for the election. But there was also this advertisement or ad that I saw on a product similar to Theranos, except it wasn't measuring your blood or taking your blood. I think it was for cholesterol or something along those lines, and they were marketing it at older men who were at risk for something, right? So this time, the product that you use, and you can get it from Amazon. I forget the name of it even, or what it does exactly, because I'm like, oh God. So I'm like, I see what's going on. I'm not paying attention to you. But it was basically so that you could basically then hook back into the medical industrial complex instead of going off on your own and doing your own diagnoses. Right. So it was there to tell you, whether you need to do something or not. It's much like, again, coming back to the idea that like the Fitbit or your Apple Watch, that's telling you, oh, my heart rate is, whatever. And so,
had the Theranos product been brought to market and had people started actually using it for what it was for, chances are they would have gone back into the medical industrial complex anyway. But the thing is then you would have proof. You would have a pool of data that was based on what this product does. And, they would have to look at that data. So by removing it altogether and possibly, yes, Geneva, turning Elizabeth into a patsy, maybe, the Department of Defense, they they were able to work around that little hiccup. Imagine if all these people came to their doctors and they were like, why does my blood have things crawling in it now? So
right.
So one thing that people need to understand about what it means to live in a world where you have no rights and they have been absolutely wholly sold over to the HHS.
WHOLEY, not HOL.
No, yeah, wholly as
wholly, yeah.
WHOLOY, not HOLY. Yeah. So is that it's not going to really look like what you think. They're certainly not going to say, hey, go lock yourself down and we'll give you $100 gift card, or hey, go get a shot and you get some free donuts, like they did the first time around. When you're in the middle of a war crime and you're a victim of a war crime, your captor is always really nice to you at first. And they congratulate you for being brave and locking down and incarcerating yourself and picking up a gun and shooting someone, and they make you feel really really good about being a part of this new regime, right?
Mhm.
The next time they do it, if they feel that you haven't obeyed well enough, they're going to do it again. But this time, there's not going to be any free donuts. This time, you're not going to get any incentives. It's probably going to look something like this, where you are told that you need to take a test because you're pre-communicable. And pre-communicable is an official term that's in the Public Health Services Act language. It's in the HHS language, pre-communicable. And basically what it means is you're a healthy person and we can say that you're sick anytime we want. So random, it's like a lottery. There's no rhyme, no reason to it. Suddenly you're pre-communicable. And in order to prove that you can enter back into society, that you can go back to work or be a part of society, is you might have to take a test. So you take a test. It comes up negative. Then they'll say, okay, it's negative, but let's make sure stay in quarantine for 2 weeks, and then you can go, and then you're free to go.
Right.
Okay, so, and this is all stuff that people are doing anyway.
Right.
They're doing it anyway.
And something that was pointed out in this language in the we've been talking about these documents, especially HHS, is that they can determine like the location of the quarantine. So we are adamant about saying that there will not, I'm not 100%, but I will say I do not think that there will be quarantine camps because let's face it, this is America. They do not want to spend money on something they don't want to, spend money on, right?
And they've already, like I said, they've already
found ways to get you to quarantine yourself.
And
so it might be your bedroom, it might be your house, right? Or it might be, maybe they will put you in an abandoned school building, but they're not going to build out camps, right? So, they may take you away, like again, to like an abandoned mall or abandoned school,
or a hospital,
but it's most likely it's going to be in your house or a hospital, right? Exactly.
In your house, right? And you'll be okay with it because you'll have internet access.
Right.
You'll be able to get food delivered.
Netflix, you can get your food delivered. You can get, you can work even if you need to, right?
The problem is this NCSL, which is the National Conference of State Legislators, has gone to the trouble of putting in statutes. So if they've gone to the trouble of putting in statutes, then why wouldn't they use them?
Right.
And if that's the case, then, then we have a real problem.
I was looking for that screen again.
You had it.
Did I have it?
Yeah, you had it. You were on it.
Okay.
So there's no reason to think that they would ever go soft like they did before.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah. And it's kind of remarkable how much repetition goes on with these narratives and how they just keep using the same playbook. But now, and the other thing too that I want to point out, and it might be one of the last things we talk about, but how actual fascism is taking place through health initiatives and health industry, as opposed to what the liberals and the alleged leftists and radicals that are out there focusing on right-wing white supremacists and racism and fascism, because they love to use the fascist word. Now the Democrats love fascism, by the way. They love fascism.
They love doing it, and they love accusing others.
Exactly.
Of doing it.
It's like you were saying. It's like it's deflecting, right?
Deflect, yeah.
And so it's a means of deflecting what they're actually doing through health initiatives, and it's pretty remarkable. I want to say one more thing, especially about dealing with fascism. I'm going to hide this. When I was in DC, and I didn't get a chance to take a photo of it because it was a little far away from my hotel, but I saw it in the cab on the way in from the airport, and it was a poster, make sure to vote and save democracy. And on one, it was bisected. It had two images. So on the left, the fake left, it was a blue square or rectangle with a hand holding
like an I voted sign or something.
No, hand holding a torch,
Oh,
like
a torch.
the Statue of Liberty, right? And it was blue, it was tinted blue, okay, sort of monochromatic, but tinted blue. And on the right side was a red image, right? So it was all red, monochromatic, but red, and it was a hand, like the Nazi salute.
Are you serious?
I'm totally serious. And so they were making it. So the inference there in this propaganda piece was that the Republicans were Nazis, and that the actual fascists on the Democratic side, or the Democrat side, the blue team blue,
were all about freedom and holding the torch. When it's really just
and democracy, because and it comes back to that language I was talking about before from the New York Times, where they're talking about saving democracy, and the anti-democratic language coming out of certain Republican leaders and politicians. So that's what was going on this whole time. And I was looking at like an email, the morning email from the New York Times the other day. It was kind of a wrap up of the election, and they were saying again that it came down to, they were framing the election for us, right? And so they're saying it came down to two issues: abortion rights and saving democracy. And as we well know, that saving democracy is not on the Democratic, on the Democrats' agenda. It's not about freedom. It's not about anything, and it's not about body autonomy at all. But they will use the abortion as sort of a stand-in for body autonomy, right? And it's not at all. It's basically again, it's a distraction away from actual rights. And as we've talked about before, Julie and I did probably on one of our footnote programs, that and that's the audio program that you can hear every week on Fridays if you are a Rockfin subscriber, and pay for their subscription,
or a donor,
a donor on Patreon. So on Footnote, we were talking about how the ERA was basically the abortion was the means of deflecting or distracting feminists away from the ERA. And so it was a wedge issue that they've been using for a long time, but they used it back then to distract the feminists and the women's rights movement away from ERA, so that it would never get ratified.
If we had a functioning ERA, we probably wouldn't be in the position we're in right now.
Exactly.
One thing I want to address is something that our good friend Kevin said, kind of like no one will forcibly inoculate you. So
that isn't the language, though.
Exactly. So let me try to unpack this, because I'm not walking back what we've said in the past. In the past, we've said you're not going to see jackbooted thugs with big old syringes on either side of them crashing into your home and holding you down and forcing a syringe in you. Okay. That's not going to happen. But I have to ask, why do they put in the statute? Well, why don't we look up the state of Illinois right now and see what it says?
All right.
How about that?
Let me show that.
Why would they put this language in the statute if they weren't going to force? You know what I'm saying? So let's look at the state of Illinois.
Okay.
All right.
The authority, public health has supreme authority over declaring new or modifying existing quarantines. A county board of health should be created with responsibility for control of contagious diseases, including the use of quarantine for areas within the county not incorporated. Corporate authorities of municipalities have jurisdiction for quarantine extending 1/2 mile beyond corporate limits. Oh my God. Jesus. Local health authorities shall establish quarantine of contacts of someone suspected of carrying a disease that requires this action. Jesus. So that's the pre-communicable thing,
that's
right?
Pre-communicable.
And then penalties on that are whoever violates. Oh, go ahead if you want to read it.
Well, what I want to do is just unpack the authority part of the Illinois statute.
Okay.
So basically what they're saying is that a health agency or a health crew should be appointed to decide who is to rent. Again, it's that lottery to decide who is considered pre-communicable. So pre-communicable basically means you're a healthy person, but they can tell you you're sick. And because they have all the power, because Congress itself wrote language, structural language into the Public Health Services Act, it gives all of the power over you to the health authority. So to me, like JP says, this is pretty obvious. Local health authorities shall establish quarantine of contacts of someone suspected of carrying a disease.
And then that if you violate that rule, if you disobey the rules that they're laying down here, and you are suspected and they want you to quarantine or do whatever, right, you'll be guilty of a Class A misdemeanor. That's pretty serious.
Right. So you'll have a Class A misdemeanor placed on you.
Right. And that doesn't...
And no lawyer will be able to help you because language in the Public Health Act has made it so that the HHS has the final say.
This is the health
everything.
equivalent of the Handmaid's Tale.
This is the Handmaid's Tale. Police power and limitations. Persons who are or are about to be ordered to be isolated or quarantined, and owners of places that are or are about to be closed and made off limits to the public shall have the right to counsel.
Oh, big
Good
deal.
luck with that.
Yeah, I know.
That means you just basically get a lawyer to take all your money, only to tell you that there's nothing that they
or you
can
get a half-assed public attorney,
Right.
Or whatever they call them.
If a person or owner is indigent, that means homeless.
Yeah.
The court shall appoint counsel for that person or owner. Persons who are ordered to be isolated or quarantined, or who are owners of places that are ordered to be closed and made off limits to the public, shall be given a written notice of such order. So this is the statutes for quarantine and isolation. You know how to avoid this overreach of power? You know how to avoid this random, this random lottery of who are we going to pick out of the hat today and claim that is a health threat to the community. To avoid all of that, you know how to avoid all of that? Go get your shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's it.
And do what you're told.
And do what you're told.
Yeah.
That's it. And even after getting your shot, there's no guarantee that these quarantine and isolation statutes, which have been embedded into the Constitution. I don't know how else to put this. There's no way to fight it. Like, even if you get inoculated.
So, and this comes back to what we sort of started the show with, and talking about how, this is why judges, this is why courts have been throwing these things out, these lawsuits.
They've just been throwing them out, dismissing them right and left, dismissing them.
Right, and where even to the point where it's the Supreme Court is not even hearing these cases, right? Because they don't have the power, right? They don't have any power in the situation.
Congress made sure of it,
right?
Congress.
And Congress basically put themselves out of work, except they're not going to tell you that because they need to make a living.
Right.
And so since they've
all theater.
Since they've been, theatrical performers for the last, several decades anyway, they're just going to continue that. So again, coming back to the Ocasio-Cortez, bit and, stuff. Actress on call, with her, taunting her audience. It doesn't matter. And you've noticed that she's been like completely, off the chain sometimes. I mean, that whole business with, we were talking about January 6th. She's like, oh, I was so afraid of my life. And she was somewhere else completely different. She wasn't even in the Capitol building when this allegedly took place in the first place. So, so these people are, just actors. Fetterman, no matter what you say about him, he's not there to do business. He's not there to represent you. He's basically there to represent the parties, his party. Yeah, his party.
Right.
So
the last thing that I want to end this with is I want to go back to our good friend that we ran into today in the store, which is one of the reasons why we decided to go live today instead of tomorrow, because it was so fresh in our
salient,
and salient in our mind and in our hearts. So you're in an echo chamber. You have gone down the rabbit hole of research. And even if you haven't done any research, you have something called intuition. And you had an instinct about this thing from the very beginning. And you know that it was cover for something really, really big, whether it was the, ESG goals or sustainable development goals, where you're going to be in little compact communities that are heavily surveilled and financialized. For me, I think it's cover for the undermining of the human experience by handing all the power to the HHS. That's what I think the whole COVID experience was for. And so even if you didn't go down any rabbit holes, you still had enough intuition and instinct and enough self-preservation. You don't want to put anything in your body. You don't want anybody doing anything to your body. It feels a little bit like rape. Like no, don't put something over my mouth and muzzle me. Don't force, a countermeasure into my body. Like that's just your natural instinct towards survival. That's who we are as human beings. So even if you never even discovered anything about this, some of you out there are on the right side of history simply because you have instinct and you have intuition. And so you've been kind of like putting yourself into a place where you have an echo chamber, a nice, cushy bubble of people around you that you've really fallen in love with, and maybe you've never met them. And they speak your language and they get you. And it's been great. These last few years, we have met so many people on social media that align with our worldview and totally get it. And we've learned so much from everybody, and people have learned from us. And so here we are in our echo chambers. Here we are in our nice protective bubbles where we have our great friendships, and our families are awesome and support us. And I can't tell you, like, the biggest compliment that I got was when my brother said to me, have you ever thought about being a teacher? I thought, wow, that's a great compliment, because I was explaining some things to him and I was scared because I thought maybe he would just laugh at me or roll his eyes, but he didn't. He listened openly to what I had to say, and it was great. So I'm feeling all the warm fuzzies towards everyone and my friends, my real life friends, my online friends, everybody. And suddenly today, we found ourselves face to face with somebody who had no idea about anything. Her 53-year-old daughter went into the hospital a year ago just to check a sinus infection. And they ended up killing her, and she died of COVID. That woman was racked with guilt, thinking that she had killed her daughter. So she went out and got 2 COVID shots. And now she is sick. And I'm just watching this whole thing like happen in slow motion before my eyes. I stepped out of my echo chamber. I stepped out of my little safe bubble, and I found myself thrown into a world where there are people walking around who are killing themselves and watching their loved ones get murdered by the state and by the HHS. And it was so hard for us. JP and I were just like, oh, because we had been in this safe place, in this warm, cuddly, sweet, safe little place. I got to go to Rhode Island and be in this really cool area and hang out with my family, and it was just super fun. And I just thought that the whole world must understand what's going on.
I've had a little less of a bubble around me than you have. I've been interacting with people, and I'm seeing a slow motion train wreck going on with one of my colleagues. And
oh my God, that's right.
And it does concern me a great deal, whether he's going to be around, in 6 months. He gives blood. He's taken the shots, and even his flu shot. and he's been sick several days, here and there, and in a row, and I work with him very closely, and I'm not face to face. It's all online, right? It's like
You're remote.
It's remote.
He's
work.
a remote consultant.
Yeah, and so now, I'm seeing these people do this to themselves, and so even though I'd had exposure to this and watching this, it still was kind of shocking, especially because I think that if this woman, our neighbor, was more active online and in social media.
She doesn't have any social media presence.
She doesn't have anything like that. If she had, she would probably be in our camp, because she was already skeptical and
but she was racked with guilt because
Mhm.
she had enough intuition and enough instinct to know that something wasn't right about this
Mhm.
whole COVID experience. But when they killed her daughter, and that's exactly what happened,
Mhm.
her 53-year-old daughter, who has a history of sinus infections, was having a particularly bad one, and went in to get treated for that, thinking that the hospital that had always helped her before was going to help her again. They ended up entrapping her. They probably shot something in her to make her go to sleep. They probably intubated her. All of these things they do, they get extra money by doing it. And then she was in a coma, and then she died, and she was labeled a COVID death. And boom, they got anywhere from $35,000 to $100,000 for that. That's the financialization of our bodies. So I found myself in a very weird place today, where suddenly I didn't feel so safe, because I remembered when I had to get blood taken. And I mentioned this about an hour ago when we first went live in February of 2022. And I thought, and I didn't know that they were sourcing my blood for this COVID project at the time. And I was like, what if they had said, oh, you're positive for some rare viral pneumonia that you don't have any symptoms of, but you could. So we're going to need to put you in the hospital.
Something weird is in your blood, Julie. And
so we're going to need to put you in the hospital.
Because we don't know. You're in danger. Yeah.
I mean, I was this close to being that 53-year-old girl, the daughter of our good friend. Like, I was this close to being that person, and suddenly it just really hit me. And also the fact that they're still doing it. So in February, or in 2020, in early 2020, they were culling the population. So the population was so scared because they were told that this crazy virus was unleashed, that every time they got a little tickle in their throat or they had a little headache, they were running to the hospital to get treated. And some of those people never left the hospital. They were perfectly fine, but they were just being culled and financialized right and left, right? And you have stories of nurses that are watching healthy, young, athletic 18-year-olds that were getting intubated and forced down. And this one nurse talked about how she helped this kid escape. That's what's going on. And it's still happening. I thought, okay, well, that part of this whole nightmare scenario has ended. And so now they're just killing people through the countermeasure.
It's still going on.
No, but that other whole process is still happening, where people are innocently walking into the hospital to get treated for something that's totally treatable and manageable, and then never leaving, and they're dying, and then they're called a COVID death. That's still happening today in November of 2022.
Yeah.
And that really hit me today. Like, I had no idea that was still going on.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, we're rolling into the 2-hour mark.
Are we really?
Yeah, it's hard to believe that it's gone that long, because we normally, end about 90 minutes, and even that's going over. But so I guess that's it for today. We've covered all our topics.
So why don't you really quickly show people the blog?
Okay. All right. I don't have it up, do I?
It's right there.
Oh, it's right there. Okay, let me share that real quick.
So if you want to hear what I have to say every single day, I do these things called what I call little audio quips every single day almost. And, so sometimes I go live on social media and do it. Sometimes I pre-record it. But either way, everything gets uploaded onto the blog. So if you're interested in hearing what I have to say on a daily basis, sometimes they're 20 minutes, sometimes they're about an hour, you
Whatever.
can
Yeah.
go to our blog. It's book-of-hours.com, and then you can just hit the menu, and that's what it looks like.
You just go to the blog of ours link there, and you'll be good.
Yeah. So, and then also we want to remind people that YouTube has not been very kind to us. And we are not sure how much longer we will have a YouTube page. So if you're listening to us on YouTube, that's great. But don't forget, you can also find us when we go live, and you can see us. You can also find us on Rockfin.
Yeah.
So you can show them our Rockfin page.
Yeah. Well,
so Rockfin is gonna get a little meta here for Rockfin.
Yeah.
Rockfin, they're
Right
gonna
now.
see. So I pulled up Rockfin.
Right there.
Yep.
Yeah. So
this is what our Rockfin page looks like.
So here we are.
Hi, Rockfin.
Hi.
So there we are.
Yeah.
So that's what Rockfin looks like. We're rockfin.com/book of hours.
And that's ROKFIN. Yeah. .com/book of hours.
Yeah.
And you can also become a subscriber there. I mean, a paid subscriber, and have access to all premium content on Rockfin. So,
right.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I forgot to mention when we ran into our friend today, who told us that her 53-year-old daughter had died after the hospital murdered her and then said it was COVID. I didn't use this kind of language when talking to her.
Yeah, we didn't.
I didn't say the hospital murdered her and you shouldn't have got the shots and this and that and the other and all the things that we know that's really going on. All I could do was be her friend and offer sympathy. I'm not sure that we'll ever be able to get through to the people that need to be informed.
Especially because she's so deeply still in her grief.
She will always be grieving.
She will always be grieving, but I think this first year is the hardest, and you're not going to help anybody by doing that to somebody, especially who's in the throes of grief.
Right. There's a lot of people that are really frustrated out there because they're asking me all the time, should I send this? Should I send that? Should I send this? Should I send that? It's like, if after 3 years, your family or friends,
they're not going to respond to that,
have not figured this out, then maybe they had figured it out and they're internalizing something. Let them go through their own process. You don't need to be all around them all the time, like, just let these people discover things on their own.
And I think the last thing that I want to say before we roll off is, wow, we had a lot to say today.
Well,
yeah, I know.
It's been a month.
It's been a month
since we went live.
But and that is we had this article come out recently about oh gosh, what was it from the Atlantic about amnesty, amnesty, right? Okay, so I'm against all of that, right? That amnesty thing, but however,
it's an interesting choice of words.
It is, right. However, we still have to remain, compassionate to people who have been affected by this. Not the, and these are not necessarily the people who were telling you to mask up and to get the shot and be more kind, right?
Yeah.
These are the people who probably didn't know what the fuck was going on, went along with whatever they were told to do. Okay, because we have been trained to be obedient. We have had our intuition trained out of us. And so these people who have been affected by this, who were not the ones that were, yelling at you, deserve our compassion and our, our friendship when they're in their time of need. So
this is where a keen sense of discernment will really help you, and hold on to that intuition, which you still have. Intuition over time has been bred out of us because we've been told not to respond appropriately when bad things happen. Like in San Francisco, which is where we're from, if a bad thing happens, like say a car hits you when you're on your bicycle, you're basically not allowed to get mad at the car for not paying
Or the
attention.
driver.
Or the driver for not paying attention to you. And with that suppression and that sort of communitarian, like oppressing people's natural instinct
Repression, yeah.
towards, and being repressed, with that comes an erosion of intuition, an erosion of instinct. It goes hand in hand. So that's why children are so amazing, because they haven't been beat up by the world yet, and they still have great instinct about the world and great intuition. So we need to find that childlike intuition and that childlike curiosity and hold on to it, because it's really eroding quickly.
Right. Well, I would say,
time.
maybe children don't have intuition as much as they have a sense of what's going on.
Sure.
Because they're curious, right?
Right.
And they have an imagination that's
and the
amazing,
world
right?
hasn't tried to kill them over and over and over again.
And the reason
yet.
I bring this up is because I've always, because intuition is basically your experiential knowledge coming through and telling you, it's that voice in the back of your head that says, this is probably not a good idea, or this is a great idea, or whatever. And if you ignore that, you go against what you're thinking, or what inherently. So
obviously, intuition comes with experience.
Kids, with experience. But kids, I'm not going to disagree with you. Kids are very good. They have a good instinct.
They do. Yeah. So I think what's happened here is that over time we have been trained, whether it's through our parents, our education, our religious upbringing,
right?
We have been trained to second guess our own emotions and second guess our own reactions to things. And so when you have this multi-billion-dollar campaign that's been unleashed on the population that's already second guessing things, it's easy for them to go, phew, this is something I don't need to second guess about. I'm just going to go ahead and shackle myself in my home, give all my rights away to the HHS, stick out my arm and get as many shots as I need. Whew, I'm glad someone else is doing the thinking for me.
Right, exactly.
Because they've made it so hard to hold on to your intuition.
Yeah.
So
anyway, well, thank you everyone for your comments and tuning in. It's been about a month, so it's great hearing from everyone, and we're glad to see you all. Please, if you haven't watched it, go see The Reason Redux. Watch The Reason too. The Reason is a good video. The Reason Redux is a better video. And so if you haven't seen it, go see that. You can go to Rockfin or on what was the other one? Rumble. Yeah, you can see The Reason still on YouTube, but not The Reason Redux. They took it down. And
give us a couple of weeks. We're going to be releasing a new video essay called War Crimes.
Yeah, it's going to take a bit of time for the production on that one, but all right, cool. Well, anything else?
That's it.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining today. Have a great weekend.
All right, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bookmark is made possible by our patrons and supporters. You can help us continue our work by becoming a patron at patreon.com/bookofhours. Join Rockfin or leave us a tip at rockfin.com/bookofhours, or leave us a one-time donation at paypal.me/bookofhours. Or you can use Cash App. Thank you.